this was building to one of the all-time great series, forget Ashes, of any cricket series internationally in history. To be 2-0 down, when really we should have been 2-0 up, actually. I'm sure we'll come to that. But to be 2-0 down and then roar back to 2-2 and then go to the Oval, which is exactly what would have happened had we been able to play more than 2 hours in the weekend. I think it would have been really the greatest comeback in cricket history internationally and the greatest series it ever been, because the play has been so thrilling. And it also would have been a validation of Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum. This whole Bazball thing, I know they don't like calling it Bazball, but the thrilling and audacious way that they go about their cricket has been, I think, the absolutely perfect bridge for young people who've been enticed in to watch 2020 and T20 and the 100 and so on. That bridge to how do you get them to like Test cricket? Because I think all of us probably here prize Test cricket above everything else. I know I do. And so to have that bridge, I think, is incredibly important. We just have to, get lucky with the weather.
Piers, I mean, I'm totally with you. This way of playing and this style. I mean, wherever I go at the minute, the hottest ticket in town is, can you get me a ticket for Manchester? Can you get me a ticket? I can't, by the way. I just can't get tickets. Do you think they needed to win the Ashes for everyone to kind of carry on with this kind of support? Or do you think they've done enough in the last few weeks for everyone to carry on with the support?
No, I don't think there's been an excitement around the England cricket team since '05, since you led our boys to that glorious victory. It reminds me very much of that. A reminder that year we had terrestrial television, so the audiences on TV were much higher than they are now. But I think it's been getting very high audiences comparative on Sky this series. But I think also I've just noticed, like you have, a lot of excitement amongst people who want to go. It's difficult to get tickets. I haven't known that for a long time. So I think it's been brilliant. I do think I've read all your critiques, Michael, and Tuffers. I've heard you too, and I've read everyone's views about this. And I kind of come to the same conclusion, I think, which is that this Bazball idea is a bit like when they call bodyline. I'm sure that most of the players didn't feel comfortable calling it bodyline, but it was leg theory, and it was very effective in nullifying Bradman in 32-33. This Bazball, I think, needs some modifications. I think that when I was at Lord's, when we gave away all those wickets, when we were 180 odd for two and then just fell apart, some of the shots we were playing before we were even out, Harry Brooks' innings that day was terrible, I thought. And yet you can see as the series has gone on, he's got more sensible, more judicious in his shot selection. And you can see he's a world-class player in the making. I mean, no question that he's going to be one of the greats. So I think they lost their heads a bit at Lord's. But I think that I totally understood why Ben Stokes is keen to say, look, you've got to let us do our thing. Because he's trying to instill in them that constant attacking mentality of scoring at 5-6 runs and over. And some of the younger players in particular, it's going to take a while for them to really work out the best way to do that. And I think what they're working out is they've all got the shots and the aggression to not go completely berserk. So I think it was, we should have won at Lord's. We should have won every test, let's be honest. We're a better team. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think that we were done in by the rain. And I think that the Oval, I think we're going to flatline them. And it's going to, I think we need to. We need to. I don't want to lose 3-1. I think that was, to lose 3-1 to this Australian team of cheating convicts would be extremely annoying.
Fantastic party, by the way. I can still remember that.
It was a great party. In fact, Tuffers, you just reminded me, the greatest moment of that party was my grandmother was living with me at the time. And she was in her 80s at the time. And Tuffers went up to use the loo upstairs, and he was in his England jumper. And he went up and he met my grandmother on the stairwell. And she said, "Who the hell are you?" And he went, and he stood to attention, saluted her, and said, "Madam, I'm Philip Tufnell, Middlesex in England." And she said, "Well, I've never heard of you, but keep the noise down." It was classic. My grandmother and Tuffers on the stairwell. A great encounter of our time.
Piers, I mean, you've talked about Ben's captaincy. Can you sort of put your finger on what it is he's got? Because obviously you've interviewed lots of people from all sorts of walks of life. But ultimately, this is about leadership, isn't it? So what is it that is in his character, you think, that's...
I absolutely love everything about Ben Stokes. I think he's got that warrior spirit. I think he's got the mental strength and resilience to come through some pretty dark times in his life, physically, mentally, other things. And when you watch him back, when he gets going, the thing about Stokes is he doesn't go berserk for the sake of it. He doesn't play crazy shots most of the time. He's playing measured, brutal shots. But he can take a game away from people like no one I've seen. And some of the innings, I mean, that century he played in this series when he went crazy was just, it was insane to watch. You know, we take him for granted. I think he hit 9 sixes and he's or something ridiculous, right? I mean, he is unbelievable. But I think his captaincy, I love the fact that nothing deters him. He doesn't make apology. There was a great interview with Athers, I think, yesterday or on Sunday when he was asked, any regrets about the declaration at Edgbaston? No. One word. No. And I agree with him because actually if he'd nicked off one or two of the Aussies that night, it would have been a piece of genius. You know, he could have said Joe Root may have got another 40 runs. He might have been out next ball doing one of his ramp shots, or, Jimmy would have been at the other end. I just think that all the what-ifs about that declaration missed the point completely. I think that it was aggressive, bold, surprising, caught the Aussies on the hop, and very nearly paid off. Should have paid off. Yeah, we should have won those first two tests. I think going back to a declaration like that, go on.
But Piers, in sport, it's like Arsenal. If you'd have beaten Southampton, I think, at home in the Premier League, and someone else, you'd have probably won the Premier League, but you didn't. So you
I agree. I mean, the one issue I'd take with Ben, the only thing I would quibble with is when he says that the winning the Ashes is not as important as the cricket we're playing. I'm not quite sure about that. I think that most England cricket fans would say winning the Ashes is what's really important. However, grinding your way to a boring 2-run and over Ashes win over Australia is not a way to preserve and nurture Test cricket. And so I completely understand why Ben Stokes continues to say we will continue to play our way and the cricket we're playing is what's most important. I get that, but I would slightly counter I think that you've got to win things like the Ashes because that's what we play cricket for. Well, I don't. I'd love to, but it's what the professionals do, and I think you got to ultimately prize winning above everything else as a sportsman. But I do get the argument that the cricket is amazing.
Yeah, Bazball is slightly evolving. Don't you agree, though, Piers? The way they have played now, it's slightly being tweaked a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the Bazball before against lesser bowling attacks was a lot easier. When you come up against a very good Australian attack who just won the international final, obviously, and when they came and we tried to take them on, it didn't quite come off because we went a bit mad. But I think the batting that you saw at this Test match is the ultimate Bazball, where you can put the best attack in the world, but actually we have the players now to take them apart. And it's just the scoring rate, isn't it? People were, it's really interesting because as an amateur cricketer who loves cricket, and you guys all know I love England cricket, I've followed it since I was a kid. I was at Lord's when I was 10 watching Lillian Thompson bowl at Tony Greig and David Steele. I can remember almost every ball. I loved it. So it burns in my soul. But the Ben Folks debate was really interesting, right? Because all my village mates on my WhatsApp group, we were all baying for Folks to be picked, right, after the first two tests. Because Johnny had dropped a few chances, he wasn't scoring runs. He looked just a bit, war rusty, really, for an Ashes battle. And I sort of agree with Geoffrey Boycott about that. I read his column about it, and he loves Jonny Bairstow, but he just didn't think he was physically fit enough to be playing. And he certainly looked that way. Now you look at what happened in this Test match. His keeping was fantastic. He took a world-class catch, 2 great catches, actually, and he scored a sensational 99. And then he gave that brilliant interview talking about the torment he's been through. 9 pins in his ankle only 10 months ago. And you suddenly realise, my God, what's he even doing walking, let alone playing an Ashes series? But I loved that interview, the fire that came back. And, of course, the argument that wins for having Bairstow keeping over Folks is the run rate, isn't it? Is that ultimately, if you have a guy coming in at 7, he scores at 6-7 runs and over, then yes, Folks is a good batsman, but he's going to be more of a 2-3 runs and over probably, right? So it's the speed that you score the runs. It's not so much the Folks averages in the 30s. It's what rate does he go at? And I think that the whole metric for McCullum and Stokes is what rate can you score runs? And if you're basically a competent keeper, I mean, Vaughany, you had Geraint Jones, right? Back in 2005. He wasn't the best keeper in the country, but he was a batsman. He was good enough, took some great catches, and ultimately was a good batsman when we needed him. So I think that historically, most of the time, England in modern times, certainly the last 40 years, they've gone for a competent keeper who can really bat. And that's the way of the modern game, I guess. But my village mates would have dropped Bairstow as the keeper and brought Stokes in. And that probably would have been the wrong thing to do. We have to accept that now. So that's why we're village cricketers and not you lot.
Yeah, but we don't get it right all the time, we can tell you that. Ben Stokes, I mean, I used to think to be deemed a great England captain, you have to have the Ashes in your hand.
Absolutely.
Now, I will go against that now. From what I've seen in the last 18 months and what Ben has produced as a captain, he might not get the chance in 2.5 years because his body is knackered, let's be honest. Let's hope he's still there in 2.5 years. And as I said at the start, Ben, I think England will have a great chance with this team if the leadership group stay together. But I've got to put Ben in the category of an outstanding England captain, even without the Ashes, with what he's... And it's not just... And the rest of the world will say, oh, no, England are just stubborn and arrogant. They're playing this stupid brand and it won't work all the time. If we could get the world of cricket to buy into playing this style, how much better is Test cricket going to be going forward?
Oh, my God. I could not agree more. And I think that if you look at, one Test win in 17 before Stokes took over as captain, look at his record since. It's been sensational. This is a guy who doesn't play for draws. Now, Sunday would have killed him because he just hates drawing. He doesn't see the point. Love that. I love that attitude. I just think he's just an absolute warrior, but he's a calm warrior. He very rarely looks flustered, Stokes now. He always looks like he knows what he's doing. He's got a plan. Everything is, he's not perfect, obviously. But I think the ethos of him and McCullum, and credit, by the way, to Rob Key for bringing these guys in. If you look at the start of all this, he came in and he just quietly sits in the shadows, but two incredible appointments. But I think Stokes is everything you would want an England captain. And I think he will be there in 2 years' time, but as a batsman, he just won't be bowling. And I think we're almost at that point now where he's just, I don't think we're going to see him bowl much for England again. And that's fine. He's one of the best batsmen we have. So just play him as a batsman, but as a captain. I think he's so inspiring. And credit to Joe Root as well. Right? How difficult must that have been to lose the captaincy after winning one Test in 17? And then to see someone else take over and have this kind of impact and to go with it. I know Joe quite well through the Dunhill Links golf, actually. That's where I got to really know him. And he's obviously a great lad. You guys know him better than me. But I was asking him what's it like to play this kind of Bazball. He was absolutely loving it. Yeah. Loving the freedom.
He's devoid of bitterness,
aggression. Isn't he? Completely. And you've got to say that's pretty unusual in elite sport that you could play second fiddle to another guy's captain after all those tough times and now see this happen and embrace it wholeheartedly. So I think the key thing, and I remember talking to Broad and Ellison a long lunch with them at a golf thing last year, and the enthusiasm they had for this new mentality was amazing. And Jack Leach was there and was talking about every time he tried to put a fielder on the boundary, Stokes would go, no, every time, no. And Leachy said the incredible thing is it started to make me feel really confident. And I began to bowl better because I was just bowling more aggressively and I wasn't being too defensive. But he said, I kept asking, he kept being told no. Now, it's little things like that I think really impact on these players. And as a group, they just seem so pumped and so up for this. Yeah. And as a fan watching it, I just think it's fantastic. I mean, what a series.
Yeah, we had Jack on a couple of episodes ago, and he would say talking about that anecdote, having the field up. And the other bit was that when he got hit over his head for 6, there was Ben Stokes clapping his hands and smiling and encouraging him.
Okay, he might have got a few little things wrong, but tactically in the field, well, at the end of the day, the batting's great, but you do have to get 20 wickets. And with I don't want to age in bowling attack, we have virtually managed to get those 20 wickets, which is, it's a great feather in his cap. Anyone can go out there and lead from the front with the bat, but then also the way he then handles the bowlers and manages to get those wickets, I think has been top drawer as well. So there's a lot more to.
Yeah, he's a very intelligent guy. Stokes, and very calm under fire. I also think on the bowling, had Mark Wood been fully fit from the first test, we would definitely now be 2 up. I mean, no question. And I also think what a tragedy is that Jofra Archer is unable to play and may not play Test cricket again, because we all remember that study bowled at Smith at Lords. If you had Archer and Wood opening the bowling in this series, I think we'd be absolutely destroying them in every test. So I think that we've had a bit of bad luck, and losing Leach was bad luck as well. So I think that we know it's not been easy for us. But despite that, I think we've been the dominant, better team.